All right, so feet look like this. So how do we get this? So, or why are feet even important? Well, feet, actually, this is a foot here, a foot ring, right? You see that? And this is super important for us because when you put your pot down, there are flat bottom things like this, right? This is more of a flat bottom, doesn't have a trim foot, has a tendency to just not be as stylish. So we're getting lots of style points by having a foot trimmed. And we do this because it is really cool to have a foot and it shows that you care. This in general is just a faster way of doing things, but we do this because it teaches you about how to remove clay and some other things. So this comes from this here. So let's show you two cross sections. This one you see doesn't have a foot. You see that? It's just the way it comes off the wheel. You see that? And we'll show you an example here, right? So you see the similarity between the two, if I can get it right. Now, then what we do is we are going to take this cross section here and then trim this foot here. You see that? So how does that even, let's put one above the other. So how does that even happen? What happens is this part here, this foot is actually right there in this piece. And what we do is we trim out the middle section, which is right here, right? And then we trim out this outside part, which is right here. And then we leave a chunk of clay sticking up there and up there. Does that make sense? All the way around. Everybody understand? So that's the concept. So remember that we were talking all the time about leaving pinky thickness. We have to leave a pinky thickness there so that we have enough clay so that we can remove an interior volume and some of the side. And that, what that does is lighten up the pot and makes it look really stylish, right? And when you look at the pot on the outside here, you can see that I continued that curve of that bulbousness around the side and it looks completed. That makes sense to everybody? So that's what we're doing today as far as trimming. So let's get on some trimming and let's talk about clay wetness. So some clay is leather hard, and I bet you most of your stuff that you made last time is too wet. So let's pass around an example of something that's too wet. This is an example of something that's too wet. You see how easily, like, it's very squishy, and then when my hands touch it, it still sticks to the pot. So let's pass this one around first. And it's okay if this gets damaged a little bit. Let's not try to damage it too much. That is too wet to trim. This is perfect-ish. If anything, it's just a little bit on the wet side to trim. It's more stable, right? When I set it on the side, it won't collapse. I can handle it, like hold it and move it around. So this is just wet enough for me to trim. And that's what we're gonna trim actually this one. And this one's just a touch drier. So you need to dry your pots off and manage the wetness and dryness of them so that they become leather hard. So let's push this one around and you'll feel the difference. The only difference is I threw that pot in the afternoon and I threw that pot in the morning and left them out all day. So let's do some trimming here of some pottery. So here we have this guy here, right? And so I got to start thinking to myself, what parts do I need to trim off? Well, John says I need to leave a ring here and then I need to remove some clay and I need to trim that part off. And you notice that the rest of the pot should look okay, hopefully, because that's the way you made it. And this part here, right, needs some effort and some TLC to make it look good, right? Because we just kind of cut that off the wheel. So we put it down upside down on the wheel, right? And we kind of want to get it into the, eyeball it into the middle. And this is a new thing that we haven't done yet before, is we need to somehow get located into the middle. Now, I know I brought a needle tool over. Where did it go? Oh, there it is. So what we're going to do is it starts off usually not in the middle. So let me turn on my wheel. So here it goes, right? So you see how it's not in the middle? We can see it, not in the middle. Let's do that view, right? So you see how it's like oscillating around. So I can already tell which way it needs to go. I'll just push it this way. You see that? And now hopefully it's more in the middle. Oh, still needs to go. So I can still just visually tell it needs to go that way. It's almost there. So, okay, so that doesn't seem to be working, right? Just me doing it visually. So there's a trick that we can do is requires a needle tool. So what are we going to do is with this needle tool, let's get closer view with this, is the part I want to trim, correct? I don't necessarily, hopefully don't need to do much trimming on this part down in the body, but here, from here up, I'll trim. So what I do is I hold my needle tool still like this, and I wait till it touches one side. I slowly bring it in. So see, it's touching, 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 touching. So where it was touching was right there. You can see the mark right there. So I need to shove this guy that away from where it was touching. That makes sense to everybody? So here it needs to go this way. And then I take my finger and I erase that mark. Erase, and then I do it again. Touching, touching, touching. So it needs to still keep going that way. This is one of the demonstrations that having that overhead camera really helps, because you guys can really see it in action, right? So here, touching, again, touching. But it's touching for much longer around, so it needs to still keep going this way. And I erase that mark with my finger. It's almost there. You see how it's almost there? We want it almost perfectly centered. So it still needs to keep going that way. So go that way a little bit more. Erase, erase, erase. Erase, erase, erase. Erase, erase, erase. And then keep going. Oh, we're almost there. Oh, you see that? How, let's switch now to the side view. See how it's not really oscillating around? And when I bring my needle tool in, it drags almost all the way around, except for right there. I feel it release for a little bit, so we'll push a little bit that way. And I hope this is it. I hope this is it. Oh, you see that? It's touching all the way around. You see that? Perfect. So then what we need to do is take 3 blobs of clay, like about like this. You would just start with like a piece of clay like that big. We might want to rip it off into 3 blobs. And I just say they need to look like little dog turds, really, like a little short. Because if I say, people used to forget, and then when you say dog turd, they're like, what is he talking about, dog turd? And then you get your attention. So you see literally like a little, like medium-sized little dog turd. Little dog, like if you're thinking like Chihuahua, that's too small, right? Like this size dog. And then you push it again. So you notice I'm holding the pot down, because if I push this against here, my pot could slide away, and that would be very bad, because then I have to start the process of centering, of using the needle tool, and that sucks. So I want to hold my pot down from the top, and then I want to bend this a little bit into a curve. You see that? To match this curve, I pop it right in there against the pot, and I push down against the wheel to hold it down, right? So let me show you again. Little dog turd, right? And I put it against there. I hold this pot down. I can bend it so it goes around. And then I go, watch me down against the wheel, right? So what I'm not doing is pushing against my pot that way. That would be very bad. Why is that? Well, if your pot's soft, you'll dent your rim bad. 2, no matter if you're holding it down, it will make your pot slide out of center, right? Away, even if you're holding your pot down. So what does down against the wheel do? Well, one, see how that's already touching? And then when I'm displacing clay by going down against the wheel, you see how the clay kind of wells up against, kind of goes up against there? That's what we want. And so now hopefully this is kind of stuck on there. Now there's 2 types of tools that we use for trimming. One is this guy here. Let's go up to me. We have this guy here, which can be used, and then this guy here, which can be used. And we'll use each one. These are found up there close to where all the rest of the tools are found. The first thing that I want to do is think about where I want to put my foot, right? So let's locate my foot here. So let's switch to, we should just bring this camera down a bunch, since it's going to be super close up from now on. Let's see if we can do that here for you guys. Come on, make it work, John. So now what we're going to do here is just try to make this work. Just try to make this work for you guys. So here is I have my guy spinning around. So first thing I'm going to do is try to locate where I want the foot. So one thing I could do, what do you mean by locate, right? Because this foot is a round piece of clay that I didn't really trim away, right? I trimmed out this part in here, trimmed this part out here. So this foot has like an outside part and an inside part where I didn't trim. So I can kind of guesstimate where I want those right now by holding my needle tool steady and then touch it to the thing there. Oh, that seems okay. Maybe a little bit wider, so I didn't really like that. So maybe just a little bit wider. Oh, that's perfect, right? And then I'll put the other one right there. So you guys see that? That will be the bit of clay that I leave behind, just there and there, right? So I put the line there, I put the line there, I put the line there, I put the line there. Does that make sense? So I already kind of mentally have a map of what I want to do. Now you notice that the outside of this is a little bit chewed up. It's like, it's not even, and that will happen a lot. So when I trim this, so I'll use this tool. You hold it like, I hold it like a pencil, like that, you see that? And then I'm just gonna bring this tool in and start trimming. But there are parts that are higher, parts that are lower. That makes sense? So I have to stiffen up and just trim the high parts. Oh, we could do this. This is a Sureform. Have we even seen this tool yet in this class? This is like a grading tool, like a cheese grater. Have we seen this? Oh, good. Oh, we used it for our plates, didn't we? Yes. So here we can also use it this. We don't have enough for everybody, so you guys got to use it and then put it back right away. So I just use this grater tool and I just hold it against there, right? And I'll start taking away the clay. Now I used this yesterday and I didn't clean it up, so I need to, all right, here we go. So I hold it here like that. I just go steady and it'll start whacking away clay. It's awesome for this in general trimming. So you'll see that it's whacking away some clay and cleaning it up. See how that's cleaning it up? So it's looking really good, looking better, because I'm trying to trim off this bulky part here too, right? Because if you look down, get really close to this pot, right? This bulky part kind of sticks out too far, right? I would love it if this curve would continue around into there. So let's do that right now. Keep doing that. All right. So this first trimming demo is always the slowest because it's new, right? And then what we'll do is we'll redo it again for bowls and go into a little bit more detail. All right, so you see how I'm getting close to that line here with the trimming tool, right? And this, you see that, how I'm at the line from using this, I'm at the line. This tool is not very good for getting below that line because it's so big and flat. I can't trim away more of this part here without cutting into that part there. So I got to switch over to a different tool. So we'll switch over to this tool here, right? So now I can use this tool like this as a blade and just start trimming away. This clay is like perfect dryness, wet dryness to do this. All right, so you see I'm really there now, right? Gotten even with that line, right? Do you see that? So now I want to start forming the outside of this foot. So here I trimmed off a lot of this part here, but now I need to start trimming the outside of this foot. You guys see that? I need to have this start to emerge from the clay. And you're probably wondering, how, John? How does that even happen? I don't know. Show us. So what we're going to do here is I'm going to position this tool right here. You guys see that? The corner of that tool right there. And I want to trim straight down. So I'll show you on this guy. I want to take this tool, position it here, and start trimming straight down. You guys see that? Start trimming straight down, start trimming. And you see it's flat to the wheel, right? The wheel head is like on that plane, and I trim straight down toward it, holding it flat. Let's do it. So here, I want to hold that corner right there and then start trimming. Oh, I switched to, so I'll do this righty. So I'm doing it right-handed, and you can see from the overhead shot that I'm bracing my other hand against that. You see that? Brace together as much as you can. Brace together. So then I use the very corner of this guy right here to start trimming this foot straight down. And you'll see the foot starting to come out from the clay. Now it's bouncing around a little bit because there are parts of here where there isn't clay there, right? So it's like trying to drop down. So I'm trying to hold steady against it. But you could see the edge of that foot starting to come out. And you watch like my wheel speed, like it's going at a kind of a slow wheel speed. There we go. And you see that foot starting to come out there? You see that? We got it, right? So that's the edge of my foot there. I'll just trim down a little bit. I switched over to lefty because I'm more comfortable trimming lefty. Anyone in here a lefty that will be doing this lefty? All right, so it's good, right? You see that I switched to lefty, but I'm still working on the side of the clay that's spinning away. So all trimming happens on the side of the clay that's spinning away from you, right? The right-hand side. But when I'm doing lefty, I just reach across the face of the thing and trim on the part. Does that make sense? All right, so I made this little shelf here, but that doesn't look good. So what I'm going to do now is, so you see how this pot has this form, and then it has a shelf there and goes straight in. I don't want that. So what I'm going to do here is when I trim, I'm just going to trim back and forth like this. and that will round that part off. Now, I could have created this shelf just by doing this too. I could have attacked it with this big one, right? But it's a little bit weird trimming such a small space with a big tool like this. So for making this part, I almost always use the square side of this one. Does that make sense? But maybe for this, I could switch over to this guy here. So for this guy here, I'm going to use this part and trim right here at the corner. And as I'm trimming, I'm going to roll it back and forth to kind of round that corner off. So for a little bit, just going to go straight, and now I'll start rounding it off. You see that? You see that? Round, 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 round. So you see how it's already looking much better, like the way the form should, right? So in the end, we would love it if the inside of the cup mirrored the outside, right? The outside of the cup mirrored the inside, right? So if you have kind of a squared off inside, when you look inside, you can make a squared off outside. If your inside of your cup makes like this swoopy kind of thing, make a kind of swoopy thing coming in. That makes sense to everybody? So in the end, like the inside and outside should parallel each other like this. So I'll keep trimming away. We're almost done with, oh, we're not really. We got to trim the inside part of the foot too. So you see that, how I'm now just rolling that trimming tool around. Ooh, look at that. And I don't need to trim too much from over here, but you see how now that looks like a very beautiful curve into there. Woo! So now we can trim the inside part of this. So when I trim the inside part of this, let's get to a good, so you guys can see really good. I want to start from the middle and trim out. And then that's my line. So I usually do the rounded side. Once again, though, I'm working on the side of the clay that's spinning away from me, right? So here I hold my tool like a pencil. I'm bracing my hands against each other. You see that? I use two. And then I start with the round end in the very middle, and I go from the inside out. Now, if you watch super carefully, even though I'm using the round side of this, it's really this part, the tip of this part, and then the outside part that's doing all the trimming. So when I look very closely, it's this part and then the outside part of this that's doing all the trimming here, right? Because I move from the inside going outward. Kind of like a record player, except the opposite. If you had one that started at the middle of a record and went out, that's what I'm doing, okay? Hold it, careful. Ooh, there we go. There's like a bounciness here. All right, so we'll switch to my other hand because I'm way more comfortable doing it righty or lefty. There's like a bounciness. What's going on? All right, so, whoa! We're gonna switch to this tool to show you the same thing. Right, I could also use different, so this tool is too chubby to fit in there. You see that? It's just because I only want to be trimming on the side that's spinning away. And if I drop this tool in there, it's trimming on the opposite side. It's not going to work, right? You see that? And I don't want to trim where my foot is. So I can flip this tool over and just use like the rounded side here. And I see I'm holding it very strangely, right? Like that. And I could use the rounded. So you guys that are here, you could see it, right? So I could just use this side like this. Or I could flip it around and use it this side like this. That making sense to everybody? So I'm just using these tools in a different way. I can even use it like this a little bit. There we go. So I'm just trimming this out. Now, ideally, what do we want? Because I'm trimming down, what do we want this to look like? Right? So ideally, what we want is that you see how this comes in at a certain level and then runs into the foot. What I would love it if this foot came out, when this bottom part came out and it was the same level as this. So what does that mean? Well, right now, this seems higher than this. Does that make sense? Like this part is higher. There's more clay here in elevation and this is lower. So what I need to do is trim out a little bit more here to make it evened up. Let's switch back to this tool. There we go. So it's getting close, right? It looks about right. So now what I can do is start cleaning up the inside of the foot, right? There's some trimming lines here. You see that? There's some trimming lines here, which is actually there. Oh, you see that? Some trimming lines there. So we want to make that smooth if we can. So we could switch over. There's a couple different ways we can do this. I could switch over now to the flat side of this guy, right? And I could use the flat side, but when I'm trimming, I'm not using the whole flat face. I'm using just this corner right there, and I'm using just that part of the tool there, the corner and just that much of the tool, and I'm just trimming super lightly. So here we go. Man, this clay is acting very strangely today. So I'm not trying to take that off that much. I'm just trying to smooth it out, make it look beautiful, right? So it did that, and then now what I'll do is, if you notice that this part doesn't look so good right there, so I want to clean up this vertical edge, which will become vertical. So instead of trimming flat like this, I'm going to flip the tool so it's vertical. So I'll trim this inward. I think I'm just a little bit too close. So here we go, like that. So what am I trimming out right now? This part of the cup. So let's go in a way you can see it. So what I'm doing is I'm trimming this part right here vertically. You guys see that right there? So what you want to do is, hopefully you have some cups that you kept, but maybe you could do better on, because a lot of times trimming is a whole different beast. We haven't really talked about this before. So it's important for you to try, and you probably might mess up your first ones, but as you get better at it, you'll get better. So now I trim that inside, I'll trim this outside, because the outside also doesn't look very good. You see that? Ooh, actually, let's stay close like that. So I'm going to use this tool here. Let's go this way a little bit, and then trim that thing vertically like this. And that will really clean up that outside, make it nice and beautiful. You see that, how that's looking better? And then the only other part I haven't addressed is this. So in general, we want this rounded off. Why? Because this is going to be landing on countertops and stuff, like bam, bam, bam. And so if it's sharp cornered like this, it's going to get broken really easily. So what we want is something that has rounded edges. You see how this is nice and rounded? Because that means that when it lands and breaks, or not break, but when it gets set down on things, it won't break as easily, right? So whereas something like this is sharp corners, breaks really much more easily. So what we want to do is round this corner. How do we round the corner? Just like how we rounded this one, we want to trim and kind of move the tool around like that. So here we go, spin, move the tool around. Now, one thing that you'll notice is that trimming is a very touchy subject, meaning like how much force do you apply going downward. The angle of the tool up and down makes a huge difference. The angle of the tool this way and this way make a huge difference. So if it isn't working right, change how much force you're putting down, change what you're doing the tool. I'm going to trim the inside of this corner. Just trim around. So a little bit of clay got stuck in there. All right, so then I could just take my finger and smooth that out. And before I flip it over, I'm going to write my name in the bottom. We could use a chopstick. Pencil would have been better. All right, name in the bottom. So now this one needs a handle, right? So we're going to stick a handle on. And you'll feel that hopefully it feels much lighter than it did before. Let me get my board back. What did I do with my board? Oh, there it is. So here's my board, right? And I'm going to need 2 pieces of clay like that. And so now I would do this at my table, but since this needs a handle, let's look at where that needs to be. So like if your pot is not symmetrical, like sometimes it's ovalized or sometimes there's a thick and thin spot, opposite sides, you can put your handle in orientation with the thick and thin spots, right? Or a high, low spot or something, right? So whoop, if this was a thick or thin spot, over here, opposite side, I could put my handle so it lines that up, because the handle automatically makes your piece not symmetrical anymore, right? So you might as well play with that. The other place you could put the handle is if it has a big blob or dent or something, you could put the handle over that and then people won't see it anymore. All right, so I guess I'm putting my handle there. And then I have 2 pieces of clay here ready to go. So now I have my handle. So you see how I can hold it now, and it's not as floppy as it was. Ideally, I would wait a little bit longer for this, right, before I put it on. But it's ready now. So let's do it.